Hello there. I almost said good morning. And welcome to the Camo Net Podcast. This is episode 6. I'm your host, Bambi Sandy. Flying solo this episode, no co hosts. They were all busy. Should be fine. I'll try to do my best to minimize moments of silence where I forget what I'm talking about or when I'm looking at my notes. Having a co host is just really good to soak up those moments and kind of give you an opportunity to reset. If you haven't seen any of the previous content, before this, totally fine. That's expected. We've got kind of a new audience. And if you have seen any of the previous content, you'll notice a little bit of a tone shift. And then obviously we're on a new YouTube channel. We shot all that old content from the perspective of, we didn't think that the competitive community or an appetite really existed in Arma Reforger. So we were kind of trying to hone in and get people thinking about specific things. So a lot of like our topics, choosing and stuff was in that regard. Turns out there was a competitive community basically this whole time. So if you've watched the previous content, gonna do like a little introduction section. You can skip past it or just kind of roll your eyes or whatever. It's not going to be super long. In general, this episode it also shouldn't be an hour and a half, 2 hours long like some of the old episodes. We're trying to kind of cut that down. The YouTube channel, kind of what you can expect if you want to subscribe. If you don't, I don't care. Should be lots of interviews from people within the scene, different teams and organizers for tournaments and mod developers and stuff like that for things that service the competitive community. And then obviously these podcast episodes. And then at some point it'd be cool to kind of sprinkle in some fun content in there like GeoGuessr in Reforger, but that's not going to be really the aim. The hope with this is kind of to do a little bit of journalism in service of the community. So a lot of the media is going to kind of reflect that. It's going to be like 90-10 in favor of interviews and trying to drive forward positive change and shit. If you haven't seen any of this content before, I also just kind of have to say, these aren't really meant to be like well-developed, crazy editing and overlays and super specific kind of stuff, as evidenced by that little quiet moment. This is just hit record and then talk, kind of like Joe Rogan almost. If there's a technical issue in the middle of recording, obviously we'll edit around that, but that's not really the point. If you would like to join our Discord, the aim, again, in service of the competitive community, was to provide kind of like a neutral space where we could host, debates and media for this. But then also, it's good to have a space that's not linked to a specific tournament host or a team. So that way, if you want to talk shit about someone or you want to say something that's critical of a thing or a process, or you can have a space for it and not get banned or kicked or bitched at because why are you doing that in here? So kind of just a simple purpose there. If you want to join in, fantastic. You don't necessarily have to be in the competitive community to join. But if you don't give a fuck about the game or the competitive community, then definitely don't join. If you would like to be an anonymous source for your team or your organization or your tournament or whatever, that is also an option. A good bit of my because we're aiming to do genuine journalism, if you're just wanting, my expectation for comments and stuff to cite and sources is sort of like after the fact. I'm not aiming to put anyone on blast or to be a tool for shit flinging in the moment, but if a tournament comes and goes like ARCL season 2 and you want to give a comment about, hey, I'm on team Nautilus. Obviously that's not a real team, but hey, I'm on team Nautilus and, we placed second in the tournament. but our team was a shit show the entire time. Half of our team was mercs, and they kicked people to the curb that weren't quote unquote good in the game. If you want to talk about stuff like that, and then I can just cite a source familiar with, or an anonymous source within the team said X, Y, and Z, and that's really interesting, and that speaks to X, Y, and Z. That's absolutely something that I'm interested in, and hopefully other people are too. I think that adds a good bit of depth to the community, and a good measure of accountability, so that way you can't just treat people like shit, because let's be honest, that's kind of the mainstay with competitive in games. So just a quick sort of who am I. Anyone can claim that they've got thousands of hours in the game. You see the quality of that time when you actually play with that person, right? So I'm going to keep this really short, because I can claim to do and come from all sorts of bullshit. So hopefully I can kind of just legitimize myself with my takes on the game and what I'm asking for or offering, or the conversations that I have. But I come from Competitive Squad, so not Reforger, similar game in the genre, very similar. So I'm expecting basically all of my knowledge to kind of just port across perfectly. I've done everything at every level, basically, on various different teams, not necessarily on each team have I done everything by any means. I'm sure someone will come through in the comments and say, well, you were just a fucking nobody when you played with us. Yeah, not claiming that. But I've been everything from the Joe that wasn't even worth getting the explanation to of why we were in this area on this map in this match. I've played like every role in that except for Grenadier. Fuck Grenadier. And then, I got bored of that, and then thought that, just clicking heads and fragging out made you better. And then I realized, over time after doing that for a while, that wasn't. I used to put out like cringe kill montages and stuff. Then I realized that kind of wasn't where I was at, and then I moved into squad leading, so like lower management, and then middle management, and then upper management, as far as like what's the meta for this map? Why are we over here? How do you recognize that a plan's failing? How do you shift? Where do you shift to? And then like setting up matches with teams and scrimmages, and doing votes on like, we're not gonna play on this map. Can we do this map? And all that good stuff. So I'm coming to the table hypothetically with a lot of experience and a lot of kind of know-how that I'm assuming is basically the same in Reforger. I'd be super surprised if it wasn't. So anyways, and then I just have to give a note. I have no special relationship with any team or tournament organizer, and you're going to see that reflected in a lot of my opinions, a lot of my takes, and a lot of my stances. I just said 3 words or 3 terms for the same thing. I'm not aiming to pull any punches, but I'm also not aiming to do explicit hit pieces. So if you're like a mod developer and you want to showcase your mod and it's garbage, I'm going to point out that it's garbage and how it's garbage. You're not going to get any special relationship there. If you're a top tier team, I'm not going to treat you any different from as if you were, you just put 10 people together to participate in the 10v10s. So that should be a positive. I'm sure a lot of people will see that as a negative, though. So for this episode, we're going to kind of address my concerns from the outside looking in. Because even if all of my expectations for how match prep and how the match actually plays out while it's going, and scrimmages and tournaments and how you handle stress and stuff like that, even if all that stuff kind of comes over 1-to-1, I am an outsider. I have not participated in Arma Reforger Competitive League, Season 1 or a scrimmage or any of that stuff. So I kind of spent a good chunk of time feeling everything out, talking to some of the staff and feeling out, what direction they were thinking about moving for Season 2, how they handled stuff from Season 1, and I've talked to a couple of different teams and kind of felt the pulse. You can't comment on something that you've completely never experienced, or that you don't know anything about. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about my concerns, so that way maybe I can put it to the forefront of other people's minds, and they might be concerned about the same sort of thing. And you never know, I might influence someone in like a, oh yeah, no, that is kind of a good idea sort of a context. And then we'll close this with actually, no, we won't do a Reddit section. Usually, we break these up. We've got like main subjects, and then at the end, we'll cover like a dumb question on Reddit or something just to poke some fun. But this probably will end up being plenty long enough. So, just a basic rundown of the scene. If somehow the YouTube algorithm blesses me and a bunch of people that have never played the game, come in and listen to this thing. Arma Reforger is a game. It's available on console and PC, but it is a game in a genre of games called milsim, military simulation. Now, I'd like to point out that there's a difference between the genre and then the action of milsim. Milsim as an action exists also in this genre, but it's kind of like role play ish. You're really pretending that you're doing, military stuff. You move in formations, you wait to shoot things, and you follow like a chain of command, stuff like that. The genre of milsim is not necessarily that. Milsim as a genre, really, I guess this is an opinion, just references, it's a little more complex than Battlefield, but it's not as complex as like a survival game, where in Battlefield, you really just fight over, for instance, with like Conquest, you just fight over objectives. You didn't build the objectives, right? Well, in Reforger, that's a mode or an aspect. Like, no, you got to take this base, and then you got to take this base, and then you got to take this base. But you could lose the past base, and you got to do logistics runs. You don't just spawn in with what you want. Being able to spawn in means that you have supply available at that base. So anyways, just kind of, squad, held let loose, Arma Reforger just refers to genre of games. And again, just a little bit harder than Battlefield, but not as hard as something like, I don't know, fucking Daisy or Eve. I guess that's a pretty big breath that someone's going to laugh at. But so within this game, there's a competitive scene, and competitive is not what people typically think of when they think of like professional gaming. You think of like people that get paid to play games, That only really happens in a handful of games. And then even in those games, you've got sort of tier 3 and tier 4, where it's like community hosted tournaments and stuff like that. And a lot of professional players will come from those environments up through the ranks, and then they'll, a scout will watch them play a match and go, I want to fucking hire that guy. And they'll give that guy 90 grand in fucking CSGO or CS2. But for a lot of these games, it just stays at that sort of community level where, hey, we really enjoy the game. We enjoy, or at the very least, we enjoy these aspects of playing the game, and we enjoy playing the game so much that to an extent we've kind of outgrown ordinary matches, and we want more. We're a little bit hungrier. So on weekends, we're going to play against, my 10 guys against your 10 guys. That's really kind of all it is. And you can go a little bit more into depth and say like, hey, we're going to fight over these specific objectives, or hey, we've got the map set up for this. But that's really all that kind of is. So with that kind of out of the way, some things that concern me looking at the competitive scene for Arma Reforger. First of all, ARCL is currently the only tournament host that services the community. That's an issue from like a risk perspective. Not only, I don't really know the ARCL tournament organizers, so hopefully this isn't offensive. I would assume that the shoe isn't going to fit, but if the shoe does fit and it bothers you, sorry. Um, it it kind of provides an opportunity for ARCL to see itself as the competitive community, which really get fucks people up. There's a lot of like power disparity issues. People get really petty pretty quick. All it takes is like one admin or moderator to like wield that power in a weird fucking way. You know, onesies and twosies, teams will get banned, individuals will get banned for like not really, technicalities, like not outright cheating in the game, and if there's only one tournament host, those teams, those people just can't participate in the competitive community. What happens if you shit talk ARCL, right? And you get banned, or like they don't want you to participate in the Discord, or like you can't type or something like that. Like what, you just don't get to say anything. So the fact that there's no other tournament hosts is really kind of concerning. And then kind of in addition to that, it sort of speaks to that same sort of issue. It doesn't really seem like there's, or rather, there probably wouldn't be standardization, right? Where like, and it's an interesting issue coming from Squad in the sense that Squad doesn't have the issue. The ordinary game plays before the ICO, anyways, because I stopped playing Squad after the ICO. I was technically in Poland actually when that update dropped, but um, the Squad used to be so good that you didn't need mods. I guess hypothetically, if you wanted to include some like tertiary weapons or like grenades or uniforms or something like that, you could do that. But the core game was so good; it felt so good. You never had to tweak anything there, so there was really no opportunity or a prompting for like the Oceania, which is like Australia and New Zealand and sort of like the islander states. There was no opportunity really for that tournament to play differently from this tournament over here. So there was commonality between everything. So you never had to play in a different way. They didn't change the capture mechanics. The maps might have changed, or like, this tournament might be running like custom maps, but the core game was the same. Time to kill, weapons balancing and stuff. All that wasn't a point of friction. That's hypothetically a huge point of friction for this, right? Because if AirCL goes through and they develop their own specific like tuning for, well, the vanilla game base capture system, it takes 60 seconds for you to capture a base and it scales based on how many people you have. Well, we don't really like that, so we're actually going to balance away from that. So now it takes double the time. Well, now if another tournament host pops up to service the competitive community, now there's inherently like a disparity there because they're not going to tune in. They're not just going to copy ARCL's thing, right? There's no kind of shared language there. And that's a point of friction I'd just like to point out because the base game sucks so fucking much. The base game gunplay has, and I'll talk about it later, but there's just no fucking depth and like there's nothing engaging there. So you almost kind of like have to add your own thing and make your own thing. But anyways, that's potentially a really big issue. If you have a tournament in summer and then a tournament in the winter, but you have to set up like completely different expectations for those tournaments, that really fucks with you. And people are petty sometimes. People won't want to sign up for this tournament if it doesn't come with like the one hit kill fucking full auto sniper rifle DMR that they want, but this other tournament does, right? And it's just fucking weird. And again, I'll touch on that as an issue later, but so standardizing, if we're going to standardize, I think AAS just a no-brainer. Advanced and Secure, it's kind of copied over from Squad. I think that's just sort of cemented itself as the gold standard. At no point should there be like a territory control mode or like the ordinary conflict, Everon, where there's 15 objectives or I should say, there's 30 objectives and you can have a 15 objective front. So like, if you really wanted to, you could just walk past the enemy. At no point should I think that it should ever be on the table. Like, hey, we're really struggling with taking Fagari. We don't actually have to fight over Fagari at all. You just take Provence and then take the base next to that, and then you've cut off Fagari. You can just fucking keep moving. I don't think that should ever be an option. I don't think command vehicles that allow you to leapfrog past objectives should ever be an option. It should be there should be a requirement to fight through the enemy and take the ground that you want. You shouldn't just fucking be given it. And for that same reason, I don't think that like invasion would ever be a legitimate thing. Maybe as like a fun scrimmage opportunity, I guess, to just spice things up. But like for a tournament, I don't think that should ever be on the table of like, hey, this team is given these 8 objectives and they can already spawn wherever they want on them. And then this team has to take all of them in a linear fashion. It's not really, and again, that's a separate subject later in the video, like sort of goals wise, like what's the point of this competitive thing? But, and then I've got some serious concerns with like balancing mods as far as like what weapons are added in, what are the vehicles, what are the scopes, what's the general equipment that you're adding in, and, sort of what's allowed and what's not allowed speaks volumes about like what the belief is for a tournament host. I suppose we'll just talk in terms of that and not the competitive community at large, but like what are the goals for time to kill, and what do you want your engagement distances to be? That's as important as the map that you select for teams to fight on, right? Because if we're fighting on a desert map, in squad, say like Talil outskirts, and you add in one hit kill, fucking giant scoped sniper rifles, are you really then going to be surprised that the match is boring to cast and really doesn't reflect skill at all, or positioning or quick reaction times when you just snipe people from like 3 miles away? Really? Like, what are we doing? And again, that speaks to like what's the idea with this thing? Is this about like pitting this team against this team and seeing, on these 5 different levels, who's better? How do you, first of all, you have to be able to quantify that and measure that. And secondly, like, if everyone's just killing each other with laser guns that they don't even have to aim down scopes with, like, is that really a measure of skill? There's no like challenge to overcome there. There's no consequence if you can just immediately respawn, right? If we're sticking with the vanilla game, and again, the vanilla game is fucking terrible. If we're sticking with the vanilla spawn systems, what are the consequences for dying on an objective or near an objective? You just respawn 5 seconds later. There's no tickets, so there's no actual consequence for you dying. Supply loss, I guess, if you respawn, except is that really a consequence or a loss? Like, you just do a supply run. So there's some stuff there, that lingering issues that probably need to be addressed. I've got some pacing concerns, and I touched on it just a minute there, but like I went back through and I watched 2 of the 10v10 casting sessions. Why did I say that like that? What the fuck is wrong with me? From season 1, and then I watched 2 of the 20v20s, which, by the way, fuck, sitting through 2 hours a match, and every match has to run 2 hours. Fuck, my weekend, just misery. Not that I'm saying that the guy that casted those did a bad job, but fucking, you can't put lipstick on a pig and expect, like, and it's traditional casting, so it's not him just with the map open up, so you can't really see like strategy or the moment that a decision was made. And oh yeah, you can see on the map like those guys are like working around to the left. It's just what he's showing for that moment. You're like, fucking Christ. But anyways, in watching those recordings, I saw like the downsides of, oh yeah, there's a fucking MRAP that's got like a 30 millimeter autocannon shooting explosive rounds. It's got stingers on the turret. There's no one to shoot out because there's no guy in a turret. I guess you could hit the thing with a rocket, but like the guy's set up in such a way that you're not really gonna work around him. He's either so far away that like you're gonna spend fucking 30 minutes walking across the map to get around to that one guy. He's just gonna spawn it in once you kill him again. Like, what are we talking about? But the individual weapons was fucking ridiculous. MG3s that are just like laser guns, that people probably aren't even aiming down the sides for. Everyone's got big LPVO scopes. What are we doing? Is that enticing to watch? Is that interesting? Big fucking Shaytacs and like 50 cal, Barrett sniper rifles. Ah, yes, because that's both fun to watch and play in. You're walking through a field or you come up on a corner and you just immediately die. No opportunity to like do something better there, I guess. It's interesting. And it exists, that lack of balancing for season 1 exists in a really interesting dichotomy of you've got what's been added to the experience and then you've got the vanilla experience, because you can, but for season 1 you can't. They didn't alter, and I'm not talking shit, at least I don't think I am, didn't alter the vanilla offerings. So like the mortar spread, anytime that I saw someone using mortars, was still like really inconsistent and incalculable. Like, okay, you got your rounds to hit on the objective. How many people did you kill with mortars over the course of a 2-hour match? 3 people? Because they just happened to be, and none of that had anything to do with like, I got that mortar to land right on the edge of that building on the corner where that guy was. It's just random. So that the kills that you got were just like, oh, okay, cool, the game gave me one. Like, so you've got inefficiency on the vanilla game side, and then you've got like hyper unbalanced weapons on the other side. What are we doing? So the pacing concerns within a match, as far as like everyone's just got 200 round magazine MG3s. Yeah. Everyone's got basically a sniper scope. How many people have access to one-hit kill weapons? Okay, well, it could be okay if you restrict, like, okay, well, there's only 2 snipers per team. Oh, everyone can walk around with a sniper rifle and a light machine gun? Okay. Does that sound great or like logical? You find out that a guy that this happened all because on Gogland, the stereotypical like middle objective was where most of the fighting happened, right? And it's surrounded by like giant rock cliffs, and you find out that a guy is above you by him ripping a 1 second 20 round burst into you, and you died. There was no opportunity for like you to have good reactions and like timing, aiming, your positioning really kind of didn't matter. The difference between you being like 10 feet from a building in the open versus like you swinging that corner but sticking close to it, because the time to kill is so quick, like that doesn't matter. So how do you respect or like care about again, positioning or ground game or like decision making. Like, fuck, I heard shots over here. I'm going to kind of stick under the cliff so I'm safe from above, and I'm going to kind of wedge slow, or like I kind of expect because I've played on this map a couple of times. Like, there's a default sort of spot that guy might be. I peek it just right. None of that. And then for season two moving forward, right? Like, because season one happened before they added mines and stuff to the vanilla game. Are there going to be anti-personnel mines in season two? What a fucking shit experience that would be. Hey, you almost literally can't see in grass. You can see them when they're on like roads and buildings and stuff, or like the floor of a command tent, but like you're not gonna see that mine if you're walking through an area. Every doorway now that has like grass in front of it, like think of Gogland, that middle objective where there's like the barn doors and stuff, there's grass in front of those doors. Every single one of those openings has a mine. What's I would love to hear the response to that. Just get good. Just throw grenades at every doorway and then it'll blow up the mines. Oh hey, mines don't blow up when you set off an explosion, like a grenade next to them. Well, just shoot them. Okay. I guess technically that's a fix, but I don't really. I think you're kind of off base here. Of our two opinions, I feel like I've got the one that makes sense. So, anyways, then there's inherently within competitive, there's two different experiences, almost two different games, right? So on a bottom tier sort of a level, this encompasses both people that are new and competitive, people that don't give a fuck about like a leadership position. It's something to do on Saturday. They didn't have anything else going on. They'll go to the places you tell them to go. They'll click on what you want them to click, right? Sort of low tier experience. Not saying it's bad experience, but sort of a low tier competitive is checkers. It's fun. It's clicking. It's an event on Saturday or Sunday. Whether your team wins or loses, like, feels good to win, but there's really kind of no. You just go places, you shoot things, it's whatever. And then there's a completely different experience or a game that almost happens outside of the game. It really kind of doesn't matter what happens in a gunfight for this experience to exist, is chess to the checkers, right? It's strategy. It's not about fun. It's satisfaction, right? Your guy, say I'm a squad lead, whatever the fuck that means in the context of this game. My guy won that gunfight. My guy, 1v2'd and won because I coached him. We knew that we were going to be the people in this area, a week ago when we forecasted for this game and we did timings and we figured out like what was our strategy and stuff. My squad was selected to be in this area, and I personally showed this guy it was this sick fucking corner underneath this cliff that you can sit, and everyone kind of has to walk past you, and you kind of have to assume that people aren't going to be solo over here. People tend to set up in twos in this area. One guy climbs up on the cliff, and then one guy kind of wraps around to the south. That guy won that gunfight because I showed him how. Satisfaction, that's kind of what I mean. And then leadership, like out of game, talent management. Like, I've got this guy that's a fucking dick to everyone, so I just tell this guy every time before we play in a match or a scrimmage or a practice, like, hey dude, just remember that you're a fucking dick sometimes. You're a pretty good player and we like having you for that, but you're on fucking thin ice as far as like the balance of what you offer versus what you cost. So don't be a dick. Don't fucking type in game. Just play this match. Be in this area, work your magic. Fantastic. That is a completely different experience. And you have ideally both of these people that are playing in a particular match or scrimmage or tournament or in the game. And they both have upsides and downsides, right? The people on like a management or a chess side can't play that game if they don't have guys to fill those roles under them and go places and be the trigger pullers and stuff. And then the trigger pullers, for these competitive matches, don't get to where they need to go on time. They, as far as like, they're not the ones doing logistics runs or giving a fuck about that, or like staring at the map and going like, God, we're really struggling on this objective. Maybe we just fall back and like come back to this area that's way more built up. The town's smaller. It's not on the side of a hill, whatever. Their experience kind of only exists because of the other people as well. So within that of having two different experiences, a lot of that is engaging for both levels when you feel like you're worthwhile, when there's value in you being here behind this boulder or in this building or on the objective. And the good only feels good because bad exists, because consequences there. If you misplay and lose that gunfight, that moment, I should kind of reverse back that like 1v2 potential, like, oh shit, I just fucking dumpstered that guy. That feels good because if you failed, you might have to, hypothetically wait a minute to respawn, or you might have to respawn somewhere else and walk it in, or, that might have been like the really good position. If you're kind of to the flank of a piece of armor and you're keeping people from walking up and rocketing it in the back, the consequence of you sucking at your job is now you don't have that armor piece. Or, more approachable, if your setup, I saw in a couple of matches, not that I'm calling anyone out in specific, and I haven't referenced which matches I watched, but I watched people shit the bed consistently with being like the saboteur, like anti-tank guy sent to the back lines to make an impact and gum up the works. Like, consistently bad at getting those rockets to hit. Why the fuck did you use a rocket on a logistics truck? It's driving right at you. You have a gun. Just shoot him with the ordinary gun. And then you like hit the back of the logi with the rocket. But that doesn't kill the guy in the front. And you're like, oh, okay. That guy's only going to get driven to do better if there's real consequence. If he can just respawn with the same rocket. Or I suppose what I was really trying to say was like, if you don't kill that guy and he hits your logistics truck, say he like pokes up over a fence or something like that, and you had an opportunity to hit him, but you fucking suck at the game, so you didn't, and he kills your fucking logistics truck or something, like, your team might not be able to spawn at that objective wholesale. You should feel the fucking shame for that. The game doesn't currently, and from what I saw season 1, doesn't really introduce consequence. If you die on an objective, just like with the vanilla game, you just fucking respawn if it's not contested and if there's ammo or supply. Well, the base game contesting is just based on numbers. So you could rock up to an enemy objective with 4 guys. 3 of them die. There's 1 guy that's left. But that guy is the shit. There are 4 enemies on the objective remaining while that guy is the lone guy. And he can dumpster 3 guys at a time, just cracking off. But because, or sorry, I should say, he can kill 2 guys consistently, but the enemy team has like 1 up on him all the time. Say those 2 guys are just sitting in a bush AFK somewhere, like they're sniping, so they're like they're on the flag, but they're not even in the area. None of what that guy does matters from that point, because people can just keep respawning. How does that feel good? How is that supposed to feel good? Do you feel value there? Do you feel worth? Like, I was watching these matches, and, everyone's fighting over that farm in the middle or whatever the fuck. And people just, it was almost like they didn't recognize the value in doing what they were doing on the objective. People would spend fucking 20 minutes looking for people on cliffs or like the backside of the cliffs or like a mountain away. None of that matters. You're going to kill that guy. He's just going to respawn. You're going to die for what? Now you got to walk it back in, right? Because they don't allow backpack radios or rallies. Like, all those people that were sitting on the cliffs and shit, you could have just fucking tried to walk into the objective. Consistently on like I'm confident in saying this, and I'm not giving anything away or helping anyone in particular, because season 2 is not going to use Gogland, but there's a little wedge next to the road on the side of a lake that like creeps right into the objective radius. You could have just fucking crawled it in and taken the base. And then you didn't have to fight over if there's 5, if it's a 10v10, and 7 of the people on an enemy team aren't on the objective. They're just around it. It doesn't matter if they've got sniper rifles and they're on cliffs. Just walk into the objective. Maybe take your time and fucking... And I'm not saying, like, you just leave those guys. I'm not psychotic. You got to deal with them at some point. But, like, make them come to you. Make them fucking shift and move so you can catch the movement. Have a couple... Again, because everyone can carry a sniper rifle and a light machine gun or an assault rifle at the same time. Creep in with those people. Get on the objective so that way you can test it. No one can spawn in. Set it so that way you're capturing it and they got to fucking push people in or something or look for you. And then snipe those guys on the cliff. I spent so much in a different culture, different community. This thing's fucking new. I get it. But, man, no one recognized any of that. Oh, that made watching the recordings so much worse. Oh, I know, I'm just kind of rambling. So anyways, improvements from that, like... Add in opportunities for consequence and stuff. Why are we playing with vanilla game like systems, but then you can have like modded weapons and stuff? And I say this because there's an offering here. Escalation is a mod that reworks a considerable number of the core game spawning systems, incentive structures, consequences, right? So if you die at an objective, you can't spawn there. You have to spawn at the next closest base and make your way back. So if you work into an area, your consequence or say you're defending an area, the consequence for you dying and losing that fucking gunfight and getting dumpstered when you should have killed the guy is now you're not only out of play, but you have to come back in a smart way, right? Because... say for like the 20v20s where you have more people to work with, right? I know where your base is, your next base, right? In the context of Gogland, right? If I'm defending that little fucking fishing village, I didn't remember the point names, and I'm attacking that farm, right? I know that for every person that I kill, they have to walk back in from the next objective. So I can just put a guy or two in between the farm and, whatever the fucking, to the north, the medical base or whatever the fuck is, and they'll just kill you when you walk it back in. If you're not, like, engaged and paying attention, like, fuck, I gotta kind of, like, flank around, because, it just adds depth. I don't know. So anyways, value for each individual player. And a piece of this... It's weird, because in the recordings, I saw that people were flying around helicopters, and it looked like some of them had rocket pods, but I never saw anyone actually shooting the rockets. So I'm like, fuck, are those just fuel tanks or something? Rocket helicopters should never be allowed. If not in ARCL and competitive. Fucking at all. Unless they're very well balanced. And the only way that you're going to get that, let me tell you, is by setting them with, like, 2 rockets and then you got to go rearm. If you don't believe that rocket helicopters, like on a conceptual level, are unbalanced, like inherently unbalanced, even if you balanced them to infantry play, I I've got a fucking bridge to sell you, dude. You're gullible. You're not thinking about it. Think of it in this context. And this might be a null point if helicopters really aren't fucking in, but um, I can set my entire team to attack this one objective and set no one on defense. As soon as I see the notification come up on the map or on my screen that we're losing the base, that we're not doing defense on, I can spawn in a rocket helicopter and I can strafe the entire objective as long as I know like what's actually in the radius for that objective. No skill, no forethought on my part. I can just level every building in the radius and then I never have to do defense. How is that supposed to feel for the people on the ground? Are we really saying that like just get good, sucker? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Competitive. Right. Crazy. Um so you have to balance. Like infantry play should be fucking king, or at the very least ground game should be king. Helicopters should only service ground play. They shouldn't be their own overpowered asset, right? If you want a helicopter to have a door gun like the base game Huey or the MI has fucking door guns, they're so ineffective and you actually have to like hit something. I'm fine with those being in. That's cool. Whatever. But like should just be for picking people up and dropping people off, right? Getting people into weird spots. That should really be it. Should really just be especially because like the highest we go numbers wise is 20v20. There's enough people like but you're taking away. So there's not enough people to have helicopters and armor and infantry. You're making huge concessions to all three of those things if you focus on any one too much. So why have them all? That's pretty fucking important. And then before I move on to my next point, it looks like we're kind of running a little long. I thought this was going to be like a 45-minute, but not really. I really like that there are 10v10s. If anyone ever talks shit about this thing, you're not thinking about it right. That was one of my biggest complaints about the competitive scene and the competitive community in general in Squad is you can get people interested in 10v10s or 15v15s for scrimmages, right? Let alone tournaments. You're telling me that so people that would participate in 36v36s inherently had to have 36 people on their roster. And it was a well-known struggle, like it is probably with this game, to get all of those people to sign up before the match, right? Because people have life that's going on, babies are being born, work calls and says they need you to come in, like shit just happens, right? But if you have enough people to play in these tournaments where there's 36v36s, then surely that means that you've got 15 people who are playing the game this weekend. You can't get 15 yeses to a scrimmage, and then simultaneously people would complain that they were bored of playing on pubs, right? But then but why did you say that you didn't want to play against the people that are like at our level or better for a better challenge? So I love that this has, the seal has been broken. 10v10s are normal. If you normalize it on a tournament level, you can normalize it on a scrimmage level. Love it. Don't get rid of it. It makes finding scrimmages so much easier, and it gives great opportunities for people to just work on gunplay and like fundamentals. You don't need, if we want to practice fight over the farm area, like we don't need armor. It can just be about infantry play. We don't need helicopters. So I love that. However, that isn't the case, right? In these 10v10 matches and stuff like that. To be fair, your play when you're in a scrimmage is going to be inherently different when you're in a tournament, right? Short of breaking the rules in a tournament, you're going to do everything that you can to win. In a scrimmage, you're more likely to work on like hey, we're going to give everyone AK-74Us or pistols so that way we can practice positioning. You know, you're going to try like more wacky things, and in a tournament, you're going to do the things that you know are going to work. You're going to go for like the meta spawn locations. That was the thing in Squad, anyways. But from the recordings that I watched, you know, the same armor was available that was in the 20v20s that was in the 10v10s. But that fucking sucks because you don't want to have that experience on a 10v10 level. That should just be an infantry fight. That should just be an opportunity to showcase my 10 guys really are just better than your 10 guys. You give the opportunity for like helicopters or like big armor pieces and stuff. That's a half-assed, incomplete, lots of words that I can use to describe that it doesn't fit the experience. So the fact that there's no limitations there, if there aren't limitations for that in season 2, I'm gonna say the same fucking thing. Yeah, that should just make sense. Next subject, culture concerns. Now, a lot of how this thing, and you know, maybe I'm wrong, and this is just specifically, you know, the ARCL people wanted to model it off of Squad, and every other tournament that comes to the game for the competitive scene is going to be completely different and base it off something else. So we'll see how well this take works out, or ages. If you're going to import a bunch of the functions and the goals and the map layouts and stuff from another competitive scene or another game that you can have competitive in, if you liked that experience, please evaluate what those games, what those scenes don't do well, right? I make this point all the time, and it'll fucking click in everyone's minds, hopefully. We make this point all the time when we talk about how shit a decision is that a game developer makes, right? Squad does the ICO update. They fucked the one thing that was like phenomenal with the game. The gunplay always felt great. There were tons of improvements, and it does fucking suck on a philosophical level that, like, at the time, before the ICO update, you could set up on the edge of a tree line. You could see me running through a field. You have the drop on me. You start shooting at me. Your first round doesn't connect with me. Maybe your second does. I instantly, because I have surround sound and good headphones, I instantly know where you're shooting from. I immediately turn to face the sound because I play on high sensitivity. The time to aim down scopes was like nothing, and I can drill you at distance. That felt wrong, even as the guy that dumpstered the guy in the tree line, right? So they could have increased the time that it took to aim down sights and like made it so it wasn't so immediate, right? They're just trying to bridge the gap between like, listen, if you came from that competitive community as well, understand that you're fucking smoking something if you say that like they ruined the game complete, or that they had no basis for addressing some of the things. Did they turn the fucking knobs all the way to max when they shouldn't have? Yes, but also they were trying to address legitimate things. What are the, you know, if you're going to import AAS as like a play structure or a layout for objectives, figure out what the downsides were with that in Squad before you act surprised that the consequences or the bad things get transferred over too, if you don't account for them, right? They made random advanced and secure, RAAS, specifically to address the issues that came with AAS, right? Of, I know where all of your objectives are. If I can get a helicopter right at the beginning of the game, or, you know, I figure out how long it takes, even if you have a person on each objective. So that way you take it and you immediately start taking the next objective, right? If you minimize the amount of time that it takes to work up to, taking that middle objective or whatever the fuck, capture wise, I know that I can bum rush a full squad in a Puma or whatever the fuck you call that, like a side by side or a Jeep or something. I can beat you to, your second objective because I know exactly where it's going to be. I know that the guy that's capturing that base isn't going to be fucking paying attention. And now you have to, like, recalibrate your entire plan, your entire match, because now you can't even support spawning on, like, the middle objective or whatever you wanted to fucking fight on, right? Do you even recognize that, like, that could be an issue? Like, God, these matches are real fun. No one's actually fighting each other. It's all just spawn restrictions and handicapping each team. Interesting. So I'm just using that as kind of an example. There's a more significant piece specifically for the competitive culture that comes from something like Squad, though, where, what are we doing here? Like, just in general, not ARCL, not any other tournament hosting. What are we doing for the competitive community? And this is something that Squad struggled with too, so I'm not expecting anyone to have the answer when they listen to this. Is the game, is competitive, this level of play, however the fuck you want to say it, is this about dunking on people and winning? Or is it about seeing how you stack up against another team and kind of helping everyone get better, right? What would happen in Squad from like a mid-tier to top-tier team perspective, you'd be in these fucking voice channels or in these meetings with people, especially for like tournament hosting, like, hey, we're getting ready for this year's X tournament. I don't know why my mind's slipping on the name of any of the fucking tournaments, but like, you would have like big meetings beforehand where you would talk about like, hey, we noticed that this was a considerable issue in the last time or last year. We're going to do this rule change. What objections does everyone have about it? Shit like that. And people would fucking complain on one hand. They're like, hey, on a top tier side, there's only 2 teams that are like on our level. And, everyone else in the competitive scene is complaining that we're so good we just stomp everyone else. But, like, it doesn't have anything to do with us, really. Like, get better at the game. And then we'll have more challenge, more opportunities to get knocked down a peg and stuff. And then those same people would shit on everyone below them, team-wise. Like, the point of the competitive community for Squad was never about seeing how you stacked up against another team or like the competitive play style or the nature of the game. It wasn't about like, I'm on a top tier team and, I'm actually working with these guys on a low tier team to kind of like help them get set up and like, hey, this is what you should be focusing on with this level and don't even worry about this stuff over here. And like, hey, you really need to focus on these aspects. It wasn't about fucking encouraging an experience. It almost wasn't a culture. It was just about fucking people with no lives. I was one of them. I'm still arguably one of them. I still don't have a life. It was just about shitting on people that you were better at. Talking shit in the fucking text channels, getting your fucking name on like, I guess they only did it for the OWI tournament, but like, getting your fucking name on a plaque on a map somewhere, like getting a shout out from a dev or something. But like, if the game's just about dunking on people and winning, it's just gonna eat itself. It's just gonna fucking self-immolate. That's not the right phrase, I think, but there's not going to be like any building people up. People aren't going to get better at the game. If you hoard all that fucking knowledge and you talk about like, yeah, a big piece of why we actually win all these matches is we pixel peak. And most people don't even know what the fuck you're talking about when you say pixel peak, let alone can do it. You're like, Well, it's kind of like taking advantage of networking and like the inherent fact of like action is quicker than reaction. And like, so if I'm behind a tree and I bam hit E real quick and then I fucking just full auto spray you, I'm going to win the engagement because on your end you're still just catching up. And like, it was just about fucking shitting on people. It wasn't about like servicing the community at large or making people better. And then when you don't give a fuck about making people better, you're never going to get good rulings. You're never going to get like good improvements to the tournaments of the experience. Everyone on the outside looking in is just going to go like, fuck those guys. And they're just dicks. Um, there's a ton that comes up with that. And that's just like a goals mismatch. It's like if you're going to import sort of the competitive culture or the structure that exists in Squad, what are you doing to hedge against that stuff? That's a big deal. No one's going to play in your tournament if, like, for the same reason that no one's going to want to play in your tournament or against specific teams if everyone knows that they're using Reshade. No one's going to play in a tournament that they not only know they can't win because it's one top tier coalition versus everyone else, and the top tier coalition inherently means it's not a real fucking team. It's like the Harlem Globetrotters. It's like if you made a fucking like a I almost said Michael Jackson. It's fucking terrible. It's like all the greats in fucking basketball playing on one team. You're like, oh yeah, we won again. Yeah. No one's gonna want to fucking participate in that. And then two, if those people like never help you out and shit talk you and say that you're fucking garbage at the game, you should stop playing. Like, what is that worthwhile? I don't think so. Um, and then off of that culture issue with teams, right? If all that matters is winning or getting your name on like we're the winners of this tournament 4 years running. Team structure and incentives have a huge negative part to play in that. Because if I've got 20 people to work with in this upcoming 20v20, and I've got 60 people in my Discord, 40 people want to play in this tournament, if I don't give a fuck about community, my community, the competitive community, anyone else, all I care about is winning, I'll kick all of the people who quote unquote aren't good at the game from participating. And then a larger scale, when it comes time to like, there's this guy that plays with this other team. He's not super happy. He's not getting treated right, whatever the hell. And he wants to join my team. If he's really great at the game, there's no trading that really happens in competitive. You just drop people or like kick people from the Discord. But that same thing will happen. You're like, what's the incentive system there? What are we doing? Everyone fucking treats it like baseball, like Major League Baseball, right? Teams don't hire people. And a lot of like competitive culture and in all of these games is downstream from like sports because they're, you get paid to play in sports and that's like a big career thing and shit. So that's always going to be downstream of that. In the same way that like gaming competitive is always going to be downstream of like Major League, CSGO, Dota and stuff. But that doesn't mean that what those people do at a higher level is fucking better. Everyone wants to treat it like you're a finished product. Teams don't set up their rosters based on like potential. People set up their rosters based on like the availability of skill. That just fucking sucks if you're in it, right? Because if you're on a competitive team or you want to participate in the scene, it's not a valid talking point at that stage to shit talk someone's planning ability or like those guys don't even do timing, so they don't even know where the enemy team's going to be at the beginning of the match versus where they are, or like, hey, the enemy team beats us to this objective, so we're not even going to contest it, right? You That's not a valid talking point if no one teaches that guy how to do that, or that that's even a thing to worry about. So, and then, my last kind of point with the culture thing is, again, if you're going to import a bunch of stuff from Squad or like Hell Let Loose or whatever the fuck, look at the issues that those scenes are having. Squad is a joke. Everyone's just on a coalition. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but like the only people that are winning these tournaments aren't real teams. It's these 5 guys from this community over here, these 5 guys from this community over here, who might not even practice together, let alone play like the ordinary game. There's no bond there. There's no relationship. They just fucking meet up to play in this tournament, right? Hey, this Saturday, we're gonna fucking do this. They're never in a voice call together. They're never like hanging around or palling around or venting about their day, right? But they'll win every time because they just decided to make a super team. So is competitive about winning, or is it about like the process? Like, hey, I've got 30 guys in my community. First of all, I've got a community. We've got our own server. The server's always populated. It's a fun time. We added our mods. My community has a group of people or subsection of people that want to play against other teams, right? That's pretty cool. Those 30 people, good or bad, we'll train up and get better over time. We'll start out shitty and like we don't even know what we're doing. And then like 3 years down the road, maybe we lost a couple of people, but like the core group's still there. And you can just see like how much better we've gotten. Is it about that? Is it about like applying yourself, getting better, really stacking up? Stacking up to see how you do against another team is really just a measure of like what you've done. That doesn't mean anything. That win shouldn't mean anything if nothing went into it, right? So I just really passionate about that because that really fucking bothered me with Squad. And then I just end this off, hoping to not hit the hour 30-minute mark, but with some propositions and goals for the community, right? Again, this is a community. Tournaments service the community. So, number 1, there should be 3 to 4 separate tournament hosts, right? Think about this as like a year thing, right? How often, if you enjoy what you're doing, how often do you want opportunities to test your mettle, to engage your guys, right? From a leadership perspective, really should be like 3 to 4 times a year. Should be like once in summer. And there's no fucking excuse for not having this if 10v10s are culturally okay, right? Hey, my 10 guys that were available and wanted to participate, they're gonna fucking... And 2, maybe you have an A team and a B team that are like completely separate. So that way you can get 2 10v10s. So like you can participate twice in the tournament. Because like if you've only got 15 people, maybe you give an opportunity for those 5 people that didn't make it into this iteration. They're for sure in the B team, and then we'll fill in from there. It should be like once in summer, once in winter, once in spring, maybe one in fall if you want. There should be multiple opportunities for that. There shouldn't be a ton of downtime. If you want to participate in an event, you should be able to participate in an event. And then one of those tournaments, right? Or even if ARCL wants to do it, there's nothing right now wrong with ARCL being the only tournament hoster, but there should be a bracket for just infantry. No fucking helicopters, no mortars, no ground vehicles aside from like logistics trucks and jeeps. It's just about raw gunplay. And I would actually argue, I'm sure it'll be unpopular and everyone will disagree with me, that fucking infantry only bracket should not be mods, really, at all. should not be modded guns, should obviously, in an ideal world, even with modded guns, they'd be balanced. They'd have damage values that, you know, reflect good time to kill and engagement and stuff like that. But, sorry, a little bit of a chair squeak as I shift around. That should just be the vanilla fucking guns for the game. There should be AKs and M4s, because it's not about who has the better gun. It should just be like my fucking background screenshot. It could be just AK-74Us, to be honest. The damage fall off on those is terrible, but it could be fucking pistols. There should be an opportunity to really showcase skill. No, it really was reaction times, positioning, and map knowledge. That's what won me that gun battle. That's what got this objective. Not that I reached out from the southwestern side on a cliff all the way over past the objective to the other cliff, right, with a one-hit kill sniper rifle. No. There should be an opportunity. No armor, no fucking real map control play. For the same reason that people have recognized value in having AAS versus like just a smorgasbord of fucking objectives, right? You want people to earn the ground and defend what they have. Well, that should also extend to like having an opportunity to showcase like real fucking skill. And that's not available right now, which fucking sucks. Keep the technology simple for the community, for all tournament hosters and organizers, right? That kind of extends to what I had talked about earlier with like standardizing between, you know, potential tournament hosts where like ARCL is running their proprietary mods that no one else can have, and then some other tournament host has like different capture times and shit. Keep the mods simple, keep the maps simple, casting tools / admin tools. If no one's aware, there was like a big scandal in squad competitive where a team had made their own casting tool that just happened to include, you know, backdoor cheats. Crazy. So keep that simple. You know, it should be, what map are you playing on? What's the core mod that the competitive community is like decided for the gunplay or whatever the fuck? You know, maybe it's like a modified version of Escalation or something like that. And that's just it. And then like whatever fucking weapons everyone's kind of agreed to play with from a pool. There's no need for like 7 gigs worth of fucking just weird shit. Ticket-based match economy from matches. I haven't played that Season Secure mod. I've heard that it's got some incredible flaws, and I know that it's like still being worked on super heavily and stuff, but you know, there's something to say. You know, we were talking about value and worth and consequence and incentives for like good play and good skill and stuff earlier. Ticket values is a really good, that's like one of the things that just made fucking sense in Squad. Like everything has inherent value because it has a ticket value, right? If the enemy team in a competitive match drove a bunch of vehicles into the middle of the map and then fucking dismounted and did whatever the fuck, if you've got the team down to like 20 tickets and those vehicles are still there, you blow up those fucking vehicles and you probably win the match because the enemy team just left them there, right? And then 2, on an individual basis, it gives you in that same way inherent value, you know, in Squad all the time, both with ordinary matches and in competitive. You can kind of be off base. Like you're supposed to be over here, you got caught up over here doing this other thing. Like you saw an enemy spawn, or like you saw a big group of people, or you saw a sniper or something like that. That legitimizes to a great extent what you're doing over here, because when you kill 3-4 people or, you know, 12 people over here, you destroy a vehicle or a base or something like that, you know, your team not has an advantage, but benefits from that. Whereas with the game right now, kind of like I said earlier, fighting around those fucking cliffs and shit, that's not the objective. You're not even part of the math equation for defending that base when you're over there, let alone taking it. And the enemy team's just going to respawn, so what the fuck are you doing? You know, that feeling kind of goes away or is lessened if, like, hey, I'm going crazy over here. Like, I, as the sniper, on this cliff, I've killed 10 people so far. That's super measurable. But right now it's not. So, some sort of ticket waiting would seriously be, even if it's as fucking simple as, like, it's not even an in-game tool or a measurement. You don't need like a script or something. Even if it's just like you go over the kill feed at the end of the 2 hour period, you're like, well, which team killed the most people? And then you went off of that. Like, that's fucking simple. Something needs to happen there, though. Balanced weapons. Absolutely a fucking huge, kind of like, I think I put it really well earlier. Like, you really want the experience to just be, oh, I insta died. I found out there was a guy in that fucking corner, I guess. For the same reason that people would feel like it was bullshit if they added in like squad type airstrikes and field artillery strikes. Like, my punishment for being in this area is I die. What did I do wrong there? Like, oh no, I got killed. Technically, this still exists in the game. It's just the mortars are so ineffective that no one's using them right now. If you died, if you're doing defense on an objective and you got hit by a random mortar, what's your takeaway from that? Oops, I stood in the wrong spot, except that it's random. So, like, that wasn't the mortar guy knowing that someone always stands on that rock or in that corner. So, what the fuck? Time to kill is way too goddamn short. It shouldn't be bullet spongy. Guys, squad. 3 bullets to kill people. 1 if it's a headshot. Like 4 or 5 if it's an explicit limb shot. Like, what the fuck is wrong with that? That's still pretty short, right? With even just like the vanilla base game fire rate. I'm sure I'm going to be unpopular in that opinion, but I just don't fucking get it. And then team and squad structure incentives. Just because it's not happening doesn't mean that it's not an issue to a super measurable degree. I touched on it earlier, but like in all the recordings that I saw, everyone was running around with 2 primary guns, like a light machine gun and a sniper rifle, or a light machine gun and a fucking RPG or drum mags and big fucking shit. Why? Is there depth in that? Is there value in that? Like, squad, it worked out really well. I know I keep just referencing that, but if it isn't broke, why are you trying to fix it? The GL is the guy that plays that kit. The light machine gunner is the guy that plays that kit. You can't have, if it's a 20v20, you shouldn't be able to have 20 people with 200 round belts and light machine guns, and they've all got sniper rifles. Wouldn't it make sense if, like, you had a guy on your team that was the sniper, or you had a guy that was the anti-tank guy? And that's part of why armor play in the game in general doesn't fucking exist. There is no real incentive. I'm sure someone's going to come back and be like, well, I was sitting in the tree line above Coastal Base Morton one time and I got like 30 kills. What do you mean armor play isn't legitimate? Yeah, you want to talk about like the 19 other times where you spawned in a vehicle or a helicopter and it got fucking hit off the pad, or like right after you spawned it in, or the time when you like went 5 feet down the road and you got hit by a mine, or someone hit you with an RPG like down the road and you're like, oh, okay, I spent 5 minutes driving across the map to do nothing. Cool. Like, shut the fuck up. That's part of why that feels garbage, though, because everyone can have an RPG. You rock up to a base, everyone can pull one out. of the arsenal and then hit you when you're around the corner. Like, what? And then two, like, the vehicles already don't have like stabilization for the guns. So wouldn't that feel so much better? And wouldn't you feel so much more valuable if you were the guy in your squad, the one guy that could have an RPG and armor rocks up to the point and you hit it, you make your shot? Wouldn't that feel great? How fucking meaningless does that feel when 7 of the people on the objective with you have launchers? All right, cool. It's just this season 2. I have a feeling that it's just going to be the same thing. But even if they slim down the selection of weapons, I highly doubt that anyone's going to go through and adjust damage values and scope, acceptability and shit. So sure, everyone's going to be running around with fucking big ass LPVOs that are better, have more zoom than the base game sniper scope for like the M14 with 2-hit kill guns that can do full auto and have like no recoil. Yep, great, cool. So that is a good portion of my ranting over for this episode. Feel like I talked about a bunch of... It took me 3 days to kind of consolidate my notes on this. I had 17 other topics that I wanted to kind of talk about. But if you liked the content, don't hit subscribe. Fuck you. No, I'm just kidding. Join the Discord. Again, the aim and hope is to provide a neutral space that it's regulated. There's rules. You'll get banned for saying the N-word. But it's not through a particular host or a server or a community. So you're not going to get banned for having a negative opinion. Something that I really want to do, which was really fun. Only a few specific people maybe are going to get this. I mentioned it to Karmacut and he didn't even remember, so that was really depressing. But when the ICO came out for Squad, the community came together in a way that had never happened up until that point, right? The people that wanted to do like milsim or just public play or competitive, they never talked to each other and they fucking actively disliked each other. Everyone came together in a series from a couple of different streamers to do live streamed debates. So it was like these 3 people that love the update, these 3 people that don't love the update. That was so fucking fun. And it didn't matter like whether you were new to the game or super veteran from the game or what community you came from. So I want to recreate that on a regular basis in addition to all the other content that I was kind of talking about at the beginning of the game. Anyways, and then just to plug an advertisement again, if you want to be a source for real deal journalism without fear of identification or naming, join the Discord and reach out to me. Participation in the Discord does not explicitly mean that you're one of those people, obviously, because these are going to be kind of publicly listed, but have a good time. Short of an hour and 30. Nice.